Hey, Big Love fam. Welcome to Super Freak. This is a high vibe podcast, y'all, exploring all things frequencies, how they govern, form, shape our realities, and are the key to living from your full potential. It's non-woo convos about super woo shit, unpacking what I call the science of self, from body and soul literacy to the power of understanding vibration, higher consciousness, quantum physics, and spiritual psych. Let this podcast become a resource for you on your journey to self-mastery. If you're curious and ready to free your mind, unlock the body, and truly become limitless, then you're in the right place. I'm your host, Talie. This is Super Freak, Awakening for the Next Gen. Let's go. Hey, everyone. Welcome to today's episode of Super Freak. This is going to be a jam-packed episode. I'm going to talk about patterned lack. I'm just going to dive right in. And how I have been seeing this in sessions, because it is rife in the field right now. And I personally have come into this incarnation to override this coding in my own system. So I really know this pattern intimately, and I can speak to it from my own experience, also what I've learned, and then what I've seen in sessions. So when I'm working with people, I obviously just make myself very available. I kind of empty out my mind, empty out my body, my vessel, if you will, and make myself available to whatever impressions or information that I need to receive in this moment in order to help the person that I'm working with or the group that I'm working with get whatever they need to take the next indicated action. So patterned lack is really tricky, and it's kind of one of the top 5 that I see a lot, which is lack, control, fear, sacrifice, and exchange. I feel like there's even more that are going to start to create their own derived consciousnesses, if you will, because there's so much fragmentation in the field right now, and there's so much polarity going on that auric fields will be created from intense amounts of focus and thought around a very specific idea. That's for another podcast, but back to patterned lack. So when I say patterned lack, we come in here with very specific programs at soul level that we want to overcome. Let's say that that is patterned lack or empowerment, or we really want to dissolve the binary code around fear. So we will be presented with situations in our lives to help us aggravate that pattern within us to override that pattern. If that makes sense, or override that algorithm. If you check the episode that I did about free will and destiny and choice, this kind of thing. So I believe that we come in here with very specific lessons like overcoming pattern lack, and that how we experience those things is our free will choice. We can decide if we want to hold on to these things or not, but it's ideal. And if we want to vibrate higher and have more synchronicities and abundance, to deprogram these things as quickly as we can and often as we can. So pattern lack shows up as imposter syndrome, lack of trust in self, perfectionism, people pleasing, lack of boundaries. A lot of this has to do with capacity as well. What is my capacity to be able to take in patterned information as light? What is my capacity to take in and receive? What is my capacity to take in more responsibility so I can accelerate in my career? These types of things. Lack of trust in self is a way of gaslighting yourself. And I see this very much working in conjunction with the victim program and abuse and addiction. So I know this really well because I am myself 11 years sober. Well, in March, it'll be 12. And I grew up in an alcoholic and addicted family. So as an adult child of an alcoholic, it was extremely painful watching this and experiencing this. And I learned about several things. One, all things about addiction in general and alcoholism, that there's patterns of denial and there's a lot of enabling, and enabling inevitable comes with people pleasing and having a lack of boundaries and overcompensation and just general delusion. And that the person who is the alcoholic or addicted will always choose that thing over anything else because it's all it knows. However, it is literally a program that's running in the background. If you guys have been following me, you know that I'm going to talk about how everything is algorithms. It's all binary code. It goes well beyond materialism and material physics and things like that. This is a quantum game. Everything is literally patterned information. We are biophotonic beings emanating light. We take in light, we interpret that, and that's how we expand. And we have been incredibly dumbed down, and we have been veiled from this information. So the alcoholic and the addict in your life, whether or not this program was manifested itself. There was a lot of people who grew up in families where they came from a lot of patterned addiction and alcoholism, but their family was sober, but the pattern was running in the background and abuse came in other ways. So it still manifested itself because these programs are designed to fulfill themselves. It's like a cell. It is designed to duplicate and multiply, learn, talk to the DNA, return messages. Like we are in feedback loops all the time. So having said that, when you come from that patterning or that imprinting early on, inevitably, there is abandonment. So we're not shown how to meet ourselves ever. And as a result, we haven't been able to cultivate a sense of self, a strong sense of self. So there's a constant questioning. And usually with an alcoholic or addicted parent, there's one huge enabler, narcissist, and or if those things aren't the same, or there's someone who has to control everything and know everything. So this is a very eggshell type of environment. Your nervous system has no concept how to regulate these types of emotions. It's too much. You're a young child, your brain is expanding, you're taking on, you're scanning your environment, you're seeing the incongruencies, and you have no way how to meet yourself and no way how to kind of get out of it because you're young, you're a child, right? So this imprinting on our nervous system happens really young, and we start to fall in line with these rule sets. And if we don't have very clear boundaries and a sense of self, then we certainly aren't going to know how to navigate any real heightened situations around stress. Also, very typical with patterned lack, if you're running victim abuse, victim pattern will pretty much always, or victim pattern in conjunction with the mothering frequency or the martyr frequency will always end up with someone who has tendencies to be alcoholic or addicted because those two patterns are very complementary and one fulfills itself. It's actually very nuanced. I'll probably do another podcast on that. And then another thing with lack, there is a lot of emotional scapegoating and emotional dumping. So control is a big one here because when you are witnessing very heightened states of instability with a masculine, particularly, and there's a lot of dysfunction and there's a lot of abuse happening, you shut down. You become a runner. You don't know how to handle it and you don't know how to hold space for everybody because it's very scary to do that. You're not safe. And that's what the nervous system is telling you. Your brain is recording trauma. This is very deep levels of trauma. So again, it's not what's happening to you. You don't have to be hit. You don't have to be physically abused. Your internal experience is holding the score. Your body is holding the score. We are recording everything. Your brain is taking snapshots. Your body's holding the score. Your brain is then going to recall things that have happened in the past. Tell your body this is how you should respond. Your ego is trained to keep you safe, and you're going to keep yourself in very predictable situations where you do not allow yourself to feel any sorts of fear. In theory, this is really good, but you can't really live a limitless life if these things are all running. So with the emotional scapegoat, if you have siblings, most likely, or you'll have friendships, or you'll have other people who will use you as the emotional scapegoat in the family dynamic. The family dynamic doesn't know what to do with somebody who starts to get healthy and ask a lot of questions. So they will use that person as an excuse for discharge their own discomfort. And when you have the scapegoat, they're usually the black sheep of the family. They usually will manifest into some type of alcoholic or addict or seemingly feel and be unstable. I've also seen this a lot where there will be one person in the family dynamic that is secretly just erupting inside because they cannot understand how they ended up here. They feel completely not like anyone else in their family. They look outside, they're looking at the situation and the dynamics going, how did I even get into this family? None of this makes sense. You're asking completely different questions. I'm here to tell you, you are 100% not crazy. This is your intuition. This is your higher self trying to really get you to start making changes and deprogramming all this stuff. People who have patterned lack and have this dynamic running with all these different variations, right? So let's say you come from an addicted parent or you have someone who runs severe victim patterns. You're typically the creative type. You're the black sheep of the family. You want to get out. The person who is the emotional scapegoat or used for dumping are usually the ones who are trying to get out of the paradigm. And also, they're the pinnacle, they're the kingpin of their family. They're the ones who signed up to clear at spirit level all this patterning. I was the kingpin and am the kingpin for my family, and it has been brutal, I have to tell you. Now I understand from a higher level perspective why I signed on for those things. And I was like, okay, I take full responsibility. I get it. And I'm just ready to continue to get curious, do the work, and then move on to the next thing. So the emotional dumping looks like this. Let's say you have a sibling or you have a parent that they're emotionally immature, typically unstable, but they present very, very mature. So when it comes to people pleasing and perfectionism, there's typically a member of the family who has to be the messenger. So if you don't have patterned lack looks like this, you don't have the capacity to meet yourself and you tend to take on the role as caretaker, provider, which completely undermines the feminine, overachiever, family messenger, or you have an over responsibility pattern. And these things, as these roles, right underneath them looks like imposter syndrome, perfectionism, people pleasing, and a lack of boundaries. So just to kind of compare those two things, now there's a lot of notes. I'm just kind of going off here. So follow the bouncing ball. The emotional scapegoat will be blamed, not taken seriously, and informed on a need to know basis. So because the emotional scapegoat has taken the effort to move beyond the family system, and it's very uncomfortable because they're unpredictable and they're saying no, they will be informed about the family business on a need to know basis because they're not trustworthy. Also, this will usually work at the need to know basis. That person, the scapegoat, the black sheep, will also be the one who will start making efforts to reestablish new boundaries and a new boundary paradigm within toxic family members and be met with more emotional dumping. Responses will really be around what you did was wrong. The effect that you had on other people was all your fault. And what you are doing isn't good enough. So what you do is wrong and what you do isn't good enough. And it's met with, by the way, this is how I felt and it's all your fault. So it's very much about the person. Anyone who runs levels of empathy, if they say they're an empath, they typically run nuanced versions of narcissism because they have a lack of boundaries. Also, inevitably, I've seen this as well. I swear, these are just sessions that are coming to me. And I was like, oh my God, I'm getting all these reflections of my life. You have an addicted parent, and then you have an emotionally narcissistic person in the family as well, who are incredibly emotionally immature, and they don't know how to handle stress. They don't know how to handle conversations, hard conversations, and quite honestly have a very hard time with being honest with themselves. So you're being shown that you're being gaslit, and you're being shown that your emotions are not valid, and you're also being shown that you have no capacity you're not cultivating any tools on how to handle these levels of emotions. And it becomes very challenging because as an adult, when you get into the working world, you're like, how am I supposed to like survive? A lot of the sub patterns around this stuff becomes obligation and right? The I'm the syndrome. I have actually notes on this. You're being told in situations like this with family that you just have to suck it up because in the I'm the syndrome, it's the I'm your mother, I'm your brother, I'm your sister, which instigates the fact that you just need to suck it up and deal with it, which is this over responsibility pattern. None of that is healthy. And I'm here to tell you, you don't have to deal with it. If you have to take time for yourself to get a clear head, to establish your own boundaries, to relearn and re-meet yourself, this is why it's really important to do pattern work and timeline work, which I have all kinds of stuff on this, videos and content, and I have a freebie on this, like understanding how you create your reality, understanding the causes and conditions, understanding that everything is patterned information. And then once you get a hold and a handle on your key patterns, you have the power to start deprogramming this stuff. No one is above you. Just because someone can see things a little bit more clearly than you, at a different perspective than you, doesn't put them at a hierarchy than you. Just means that they've done a little bit more work, that more of their innate talents are online. We're offline. That's what being unconscious is. We are offline. We are not light information instantly upgrading. We're offline. So when you come online, you have access to everything, which is the reason why I can kind of like riff on this stuff so intently. And there's a lot here, but with pattern lack, notice if any of these things just started to make sense for you. If you're just like, oh my God, light bulbs going off, like that's so me, Talie. That's exactly how I grew up. I relate so much to what you're saying. And it was interesting because I'll be in sessions and someone will tell me what they do as a profession. And I will say, wow, I didn't see any of that in your field because they have veiled themselves from their own brilliance with imposter syndrome. It is heartbreaking. At the core of patterned lack, you do not feel you have enough. It is a value program. And you spend your entire adult life thinking that you're not worthy. And it's just complete and utter bullshit. You are. Becoming a high value person is kind of a lifelong game if you're not shown how to have it. If the masculine is not a strong, provider-minded masculine that is showing you and validating that your existence is enough and not pushing ideology onto you, you will spend the rest of your life being in dysfunctional relationships and settling for less. And that will be disguised as high performance, overachievement, never good enough, I want more, and a deep desire to have impact when really what you want is more access to self. I totally get it. Once we can learn to re-meet ourselves, everything starts to get a lot easier. Timeline work is really helpful. Pattern work is really helpful. I'm going to have a lot of meditations on this stuff coming up. So if you found this episode helpful, stick around because I'm going to talk a lot about narcissism in this upcoming season. Okay, in the meantime, get your freak on, y'all, and I'll see you on the next episode. Thanks so much for listening, you guys. Please make sure to leave a review and follow the fun on social media because that's how it works in this world. In the meantime, get your freak on. I'll see you in the next session.